Hey guys, it's Dan Martin and it's on education. And I got a question for you. Do you think your kids will ever get caught up at school after this pandemic?
Total agony.
Do you think that they will suffer for the rest of their academic career because of the lost instruction that they've gone through during this terrible time? Well, today we're going to look at the national trends in test scores.
Let's do it.
And we're going to look at the Department of Education and what they are doing, or more importantly, what they're not doing. And then we're going to make some suggestions on how you can advocate for your child, how you can become your child's primary educator, and how you can get them caught up.
One of those win one for the Gipper speeches.
So without further ado, let's get after it. Okay, guys, so we are going to take a look at test scores across the nation, and these are reported by the National Assessment of Education Progress, NAEP. And this is a board that is appointed by the Secretary of Education. So this is the Department of Education in Washington, D.C.'s report. And they report these scores typically every 2 years. So let's take a look first at the fourth grade reading scores among years. And the scores are reported on a 1 to 500 scale. And you'll see here that between 2019, the score was reported as 220. That's the average among all the schools that they gather data from. And it went down in 2022 to 2017.
Oh, you got to be kidding me!
And so we have a 3-point drop here. They note that the average reading scores were lower for both 4th and 8th grade students compared to 2019. And the drop was the same, 3 points, a drop between 2019 and 2022.
Stupid is, stupid does, sir.
They also note that the scores were lower this time than they have been in previous years, going back to 1998, where the score was 2015. So this is the lowest score that we've had in quite some time. So let's take a look at the math score, and you can see a even bigger drop here in the math scores between 2019 and 2022. The math scores dropped 5 points from 241 in 2019 to 236 in 2022. So that was a drop for 4th grade, but they noted that the drop in math scores for 8th graders dropped 8 points in the same time frame.
It's pain and suffering.
So here we have a drastic decrease in math and reading scores with our 4th and 8th graders.
They are bad. They are so bad.
Okay, so the Department of Education, I looked on their website and I thought, well, surely they are going to address these drops in test scores and have a plan in place to mediate some of the instruction, to increase the amount of instruction, provide extra funds for extra tutoring during the summer. But when I looked at their plan for this year, they note that they're going to wait till September 20th of 2023 to come up with even a plan. And so, again, the inefficiency of the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. is startling.
You fat, lazy, and stupid!
When I did a study on the national teacher shortage, I thought surely they're collecting data on people entering and leaving the profession, and they have no such data to report. So,
in this parade of stupid and dumb...
this is typical of big government bureaucracies. They tend to be very slow and inefficient in their response to any type of crisis. And so
I have no one to blame but myself.
I think that the thing that we need to take a hold of here, or the major lesson, is that we cannot depend upon the national government to help us with education. And whoever the next president is in 2024 should take a good hard look at decreasing the Department of Education and putting more funds at the local level. One of the things I always run into when I talk about teacher salaries is, I've been a proponent of increasing teacher salaries my whole career. And people always say, well, we spend a tremendous amount of money on education. And my response to that is, yes, we do. And a lot of it's wasted. We need to really concentrate on being more efficient and reducing the bureaucracy and having the money get down to the level of the student.
Genius is showing.
I find it shocking that we spend all this money on education, and still, I think it was like 65% of the teachers reported spending their own money on school supplies. So that just doesn't make any sense at all to me.
What the WTF are you doing?
Okay, so let's look at the Department of Education in Washington's goals between 2022 and 2026. Strategic goal number 1, promote equity in student access to educational resources, opportunities, and inclusive environments.
Get fussy.
Strategic goal number 2, support a diverse and talented educator workforce and professional growth to strengthen student learning.
Get fussy.
Strategic goal number 3, meet students' social, emotional, and academic needs.
Get fussy.
Strategic number 4, increase post-secondary value by focusing on equity-conscious strategies to address access to high-quality institutions, affordability, completion, post-enrollment success, and support for inclusive institutions.
Get fussy.
And strategic 5, enhance the department's internal capacity to optimize the delivery of its mission.
Good grief.
All right, so you see here, probably the only one that actually mentions student performance is number 2. It says, by diversifying the educator workforce, they hope to grow to strengthen student learning. And so there are no real measurable goals here. All these are kind of ideals more than they are goals.
Get fussy.
I was always told goals need to be measurable and time delimited. We will increase student performance by 4 points by the end of 2024 would be a good goal. Or we will increase student reading proficiency by 4 points in 2026. And so these are all fuzzy, kind of woke goals. And we are spending a lot of money on these fuzzy goals that cannot really truly be measured. All right, so now let's take a look at 4th grade reading scores across some states.
Oh, it is unlike Donkey Kong.
And I was kind of interested in seeing if we could see a pattern between the states that were shut down more and those that were open more. So I picked California, New York, and Florida. I think California and New York were a couple of the states that were shut down for longer periods of time. And then Florida was a state that tried to stay open during the pandemic. And so let's look at the reading scores here for New York. In 2019, their score was reported to be 216. And in 2022, their score was reported to be 214. In 2019 in New York, the score was 220. And then they lost 6 points in 2022, went down to 2014. In Florida, 2019, the score was 225, and it remained 225 in 2022. And so here you can see a difference in the pattern. The pattern here is the schools that were shut down for longer periods of time tended to lose reading ability, and the ones that stayed pretty much open stayed even, and that is kind of the pattern that we see here with reading scores. Let's look at the math scores at these three states. All right, so fourth grade math scores in 2019 in California, they reported 235 was their math score. In 2022, the score dropped by 5 points to 230. In New York, the score was 237 in 2019, and it dropped 10 whole points to 227 in 2022. Florida did not fare as well in their math scores as they did in their reading scores. In 2019, they reported a score of 246, and they lost 5 points, going down to 241 in 2022. So here you can see a kind of a mixed bag of reporting here, in that Florida did lose some ground in their math scores over the pandemic. But you can see that their scores were higher to start off with than either New York or California. And so you can make a point that perhaps they had a harder time because the scores were high to start with. Okay, you probably say, enough of that. You know, we are experiencing some difficulties right now. I know that we are, but what can I do about it? Is my kid doomed to be behind the rest of their academic career?
It's pain and suffering.
And my thought about this is that you need to roll up your sleeves and get after it. You can do it! And so I think the first thing that you need to do is find out where your kid's at. And what do I mean by that? Well, I think you need to contact your kid's teacher or teachers and get an idea about how they are currently performing in school. Get last year's test scores. Look at what they're doing right now in school. Teachers are super busy. They have lots of kids that they are responsible for. And you may think, well, my kid's the most important one in the class. Well, your kid's the most important to you, that's for sure. And your kid's extremely important to the teacher. And so try to figure out a good way of communicating with your child's teacher, whether it's through email or a conference, and find out where they're at. The second thing I would encourage you to do is read with your kid.
Reading.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might say, well, that's a little bit awkward for me. But what you can do is make sure that your kid has books that they're interested in. Take them to the library, maybe arrange to meet them at the school library at a certain period of time, and make sure that they have books that they are interested in. One of the things I think is a great idea is, if you can afford to do it, is to go someplace like Barnes & Noble and pick out a book that you can both read together.
Me reading.
And so especially in high school, you may not have similar interests that your kid has, but try to find something that you can both read together, and that way you can talk about it over dinner. You can talk about it on your way to school. And so those would be extremely beneficial exercises to make your kid aware of how much you value reading and be a good role model for your kid. I took my son to the University of Louisville when he was a freshman, and they had a program where everybody on campus read a common book, and they would design some lessons in every class to bring that book into discussion.
Genius is showing.
And I think that was an excellent way of promoting reading, promoting the fact that education involves reading and expanding your horizons. And so I think that is a great point. Don't be afraid to do math with your kid.
Math, 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 math.
You might think, well, they do math so much differently nowadays than when I was a kid. Students still need to learn basic math, fractions, proportions, balancing checkbooks, managing money. Those things can be taught at home. And just because you don't do it the exact way that they're teaching it at school, it's always great to have multiple ways to be able to solve problems. You can do it! And so I think that doing some math at home, helping them realize that you have a budget in your house and how you proportion that money and keep track of it is a great way. If you're uncomfortable doing that, there's always great YouTube videos that you can watch to get some great ideas on how to do that. And so I hope you found this beneficial to you. I certainly enjoyed thinking about it and considering it. And one of the things I ran across when I was doing this was England is already attacking the loss of education of their students during the pandemic. They have appropriated a huge amount of pounds, and they're starting right away with summer programs. And so I would encourage you this summer to look for programs to help your child stay up to date and maybe to fill in some learning gaps that they have acquired during the pandemic. And so I wish you the best. I pray for our nation. I pray for our kids. And hopefully all of us working together can come up with ways to fill in these gaps. Peace.